Hello and welcome in. Hey, guess what, everybody? After a long hiatus, we are finally back. So much to talk about. So excited about everything that's coming up in the future. Excited about who we're going to be speaking with today. And let's get caught up a little bit here. Our last broadcast was in December, just before Christmas.
Mhm.
And let's go ahead and wish Merry Christmas to everybody first and foremost. Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope it was a great
Yeah.
one.
And
Um,
Happy New
I,
Year.
and Happy New Year. Absolutely. It is now
Uh-huh.
2024. I cannot believe it's already March of 2024.
I know.
This,
Where did the time
this
go?
year has definitely, oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. How are you, Susan?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well right now.
Good.
Things are
Good.
going fantastic. Uh, we've finally got settled in where we are, and
Uh-huh.
things are just on the up and up right now. So I'm in a positive mood. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm
Oh, that's
excited about
great.
who we're going to be bringing on here.
Yeah. And you
Uh,
heard the
just
good
to let
news
everybody know.
about Soul Sunshine, right? We've got another best-selling author, and we have a book award winner. The Titan Literary Titan Book Award was awarded to one of our books as well.
Yes, the Literary Titan Book Award. Which so you're
Mhm.
going to start seeing our branding now with that medal on all of our future advertisements, Facebook posts,
Mhm.
everything. That was very exciting to receive that reward. You do an amazing
Yeah,
job with it.
yeah. That
We've
went
had a lot more.
to Searching for Proof and Faith by Rick Hasty and Waverly Cowart Hasty. That's his daughter. They co-wrote the book. And they did such a fabulous job. I submitted their book um, to this book award contest, and they won it.
That was such happy news when you shared
Yeah.
that. That was really exciting. We have a very special guest today. We have author Heather Brooke, LPC, which I found out stands for Licensed Professional Counselor.
Counselor.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Counselor, licensed professional counselor. She is the
Right.
award-winning author of "Where's My Hair?" A oh,
Trichotillomania.
Trichotillomania. We're
Yeah.
gonna bring
Yeah.
her on. She's gonna
Yeah.
pronounce it, and she's going to explain it. So, without further ado, let's bring in Heather.
Hi, Heather.
Heather, hi.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
You're
Well,
most
thank
certainly
you for
very
coming.
welcome. Welcome into the show. So again, I know I pronounced it absolutely horrible. So would you pronounce it for us again?
It's Trichotillomania.
Trichotillomania.
Okay.
And your
Yes.
book is "Where's My Hair? A Trichotillomania Story for Children."
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
want to start. Explain trichotillomania and for anybody out there who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah. So trichotillomania is classified as a body focused repetitive behavior. And so trichotillomania is a hair pulling disorder. So people with this disorder might pull their eyelashes, eyebrows, hair, or hair from other areas of their body. There is no known cure for trichotillomania. There have been cases of people who have been able to stop using different tools, people who have been able to decrease the amount of their pulling using different tools, and then some people who aren't able to control it at all. And so there are varying degrees, and it's a spectrum. The thing that trichotillomania is closely related to that most people can relate with is nail biting or skin picking. And so
Mhm.
those are also classified as body focused repetitive behaviors. So people who are consistently picking at their skin or see flaws and imperfection in their skin to the point where maybe they're causing more sores on their
Mhm.
skin because of the picking, would be classified as that body focused repetitive behavior, or someone who bites their nails and then bites it down so far that like they're biting it down
Mhm.
into a quick or the skin around the nails. That's a body focused repetitive behavior. That's in the same category and classification as trichotillomania.
Mm. Is it due to anxiety or is it something else?
So there is a lot of research that still needs to be done around the causes. For me personally, I believe mine was personally related to and the result of trauma. It became my coping
Mhm.
mechanism. And you mentioned anxiety, and I think that for me, that's exactly what it was. I was
Mhm.
molested by an older cousin as a child, and my trichotillomania developed a few months after that. And I
Uh,
wasn't talking about it. I wasn't sharing what had happened to me, and I was just carrying it all inside. And that
mm,
first pull was an accidental pull. Like I wasn't intending to try to pull out my hair. I'd actually had an eyelash that was poking me in the eye, and I was trying to straighten it out, and it came out of my eye. And when that
uh-huh.
happened, I relate it to people who self harm and cut. There was
Mhm.
a immediate release of like all of that tension and anxiety that I had been carrying inside of me. That's kind of just like it's like a release, but then it
Mhm.
builds back up. And that's where like that addictive part of the cycle happens.
Mhm.
And so for me, I feel like it was related to my anxiety, and it was a direct result of trauma. Other people who've had the disorder though have not reported anxiety, have not reported trauma. And so there's still a whole lot of research that still has to be
Mhm.
done around what are the prerequisites for someone who might have this disorder. They're looking at
Mhm.
genetics, they're looking at biology. It tends to be happen more frequently in women, but that could also just be because women report it more frequently than men. Men can hide
Mhm.
it through, more socially acceptable ways than women. And so there's still just so much to be learned about it.
Yeah. How common is it?
It's actually fairly a bit body focused repetitive behaviors, again, which is the hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, is actually a very common disorder or
Mhm.
classification disorders with 1 in 4 people having a body focused repetitive behavior.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow. That's
Likely of you knowing someone who at some point in their life
uh-huh.
has struggled with one of those things
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
very high.
Yeah. My brother used to pull his eyelashes out when we were kids. And I remember my mother taking him to the doctor when she saw his eyelashes were just gone. And she thought there was something wrong. And he hadn't told her anything about, pulling them himself. And she took him to the doctor and the doctor said, well, there's nothing wrong with him. He's pulling them out. So he identified it, when my brother wasn't saying anything. But I'm assuming that if somebody does that, they know about it. They don't
So
do it totally subconsciously or.
yeah, so, like, it can be a combination of both. There were
Mhm.
times where, like I said, like, mine started as an accident, and
Mhm.
then it would be a lot of it would be subconscious, like, I wouldn't even realize that I was doing it, but then at one point where when my grandmother actually is the one who noticed, like, my eyelashes first, and
Mhm.
so then I made a conscious choice to try to start pulling from somewhere else, thinking like, "Oh, like, I'm gonna
Uh,
pull from my eyebrows like I'm plucking them. I can control
uh-huh.
that and manage that, and nobody's gonna notice, and my eyelashes will grow back." That was my thought
Uh-huh.
process at 12, 13, 14 years old. No, that just made a bigger problem, because now I was pulling
Mm,
from my eyebrows, like, intentionally pulling from my eyebrows to try to stop pulling my eyelashes, but still subconsciously picking at my lashes, and then it just kinda
mhm,
manifested into eyebrows, eyelashes, hair. And so
mm,
there would be times where, like, I would be conscious of what I was doing, and there would be times where, like, I wouldn't even be aware that I had been doing it until the next morning. Like, I would pull a lot, like, at bedtime,
mhm.
especially from my
Yeah.
head, and I wouldn't even realize that I was doing it until I, like, saw hair on the floor the
y-
next morning and was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, what did I do?" So
And
it could
my
be a lot of
brother,
subconscious.
yeah, my brother did the same thing. He went from the eyelashes to the top of his head, like the crown of his hair.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's really interesting to hear. You say that it's so common. I had never heard of it before, except for my brother.
Mhm.
But of course, I know lots of people who chew their nails. That's seems to be the most common, you
Mhm.
would think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and I think that is because that's the one that most people are familiar with and know about, like, so, like, that's
Uh-huh.
something that most people don't feel embarrassed saying, like, "Oh, I bite my nails." We hear that all the
Yeah.
time, right? But you don't hear people saying like, "Oh, I pick at my skin so much that I cause more damage to my skin," or "I pull my hair," right? Because we keep
Yeah.
those things cause more self-consciousness and aren't as socially acceptable as I think the
Mhm.
nail biting is. And that's why one of the things, like, you probably do know more people in your life who have some of these issues. They just haven't openly talked about them.
Mhm.
Because
Right.
I didn't know anybody when I was growing up. I didn't know anybody who did it either. I felt like I was alone. I felt like a freak. I was like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop doing this? Why am I the only person in the world that does this? And I grew up in the 80s and 90s before internet,
Mhm.
so I didn't have
Yeah.
Google to go to get answers.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I found out actually like it was given a name to me through a late night television commercial. I was watching an infomercial
Huh.
that a woman was wearing wigs and fake lashes, and she talked about pulling her hair, and she gave it a name. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I do. Like, and I just remember sitting on the
Uh-huh.
couch, like bawling because I was like, oh my gosh, there's somebody else who does this. And she gave it a name.
Uh-huh.
And so that was like a sense of relief for me. But it
Right.
wasn't until I was an adult and started talking about it openly, and actually made a Facebook post about it, that an ex-boyfriend of mine from high school reached out to me and said, I never knew you did that. And he was like, I did that too. That's why I kept my head shaved the whole time that we were in high school, because I
Wow.
pulled my hair and shaving my head kept me from pulling my hair. So
Uh-huh. Wow.
men can hide it in more socially acceptable ways so
Mhm.
that they don't have to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then with the creation and the invention and more being socially acceptable with wigs and extensions and things like that, and fake eyelashes and the tattoos and everything now, women can hide it
Mhm.
more, and it's more,
Mhm.
so we actually probably do know more people who are struggling with BFRBs than are actually being talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. So you wrote a
I
book
want to
about it.
say first and foremost, yeah, well, I want to say first and foremost, thank you for being so open about it and being real with it. So people out there can actually hear your story and, say if they're going through this as well, they know more about it. So I appreciate you actually coming on and actually talking about that, which leads us to our next question. Why? Pretty sure we know the answer to this, but why did you write this book?
Yeah. So why did I write the book? And this was actually that was my trichotillomania was something that I struggled with for a long time. Like I'm a Christian, and I would pray all the time as a kid, like, God, take this away from me. God, take this away from me, to the point where I
Mhm.
was getting angry because God, like, there was a time where I think I really
Mhm.
was angry with God for not taking it away from me. And as I got older and got into counseling and into therapy, and started talking more publicly about my disorder, um, I started getting recommendations and referrals for people who had trichotillomania, because like
Mhm.
people felt like, oh, you can relate as a therapist, you can relate to them. And so I started getting referrals. And I had this 14-year-old girl who came into my office with her stepmom, and her stepmom said, our occupational therapist recommended you because she has trichotillomania. And she gave me all of this information that the OT had given her about trichotillomania that was inaccurate information. And I was like, the only
Oh.
thing that you have right here is the name of the disorder. And so the little girl was on the autism spectrum. And so she was actually nonverbal.
Uh-huh.
And
Wow.
so when I work with kids, a lot of times I will often try to use a book, because I think that that's a good way for them to relate. And so I went to the internet looking for a book to share with them, or to share with her and her mom, and I couldn't find anything. I could find stuff for
Mm.
therapists, I could find stuff for adults with trichotillomania, I could find stuff for parents with children with trichotillomania, but I couldn't find anything specifically for children. So
Mhm.
I sat down at my desk and in literally 10 minutes wrote out my story, loosely using my own personal experience. And then I sent it to my mom. and my mom illustrated all of the pictures using a picture of my oldest daughter. She illustrated all of the pictures in pencil, and then
Uh-huh.
I sent it all to a publishing company, and they enhanced my mom's illustrations with color, and we published in August of 2018.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Yeah. Was your mom an illustrator before?
No, she she
Oh,
just likes to draw. She drew and sketched for fun.
uh-huh.
She's kind of been in and out of a number of careers, but she was in the medical industry for 25 years.
Mhm.
And the doctor that I talk about in my book, Dr. Cox, was actually the actual name of the doctor who gave me my official diagnosis and treated me.
Oh,
And that was the doctor that she worked for at the time.
uh-huh. Wow. That's really neat that you were able to use your own experience, put it in the book, and now help other children with the same issues. So
Yeah.
do you find that it helps them once they see or read a book like that? Do they feel more comforted, let's say?
Yeah, I think so. I know from like my own personal experience when I can read something and I can relate to it, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
somebody wrote a book about this. So I'm obviously not the only person who's struggling with this. I'm not the only person
Yeah.
who's dealt with this. And so that was one of the main reasons that I wrote the book, because I wanted kids to know that they weren't alone, that there are other people out
Hmm.
there who are doing the same thing as them. But then after I published, I started getting messages from people on Facebook saying, thank you for writing this book. I wished I had had, and these were adults saying, thank
Uh-huh.
you for writing this book. I wish I'd had this book when I was a kid. This would have helped
Oh,
me not
yeah.
feel so alone when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And so I think even adults who knew at this point and are aware of what they were doing and what they had were able to still relate to it and got some comfort from it.
Hmm. Is there any research that shows it's genetic?
They're looking at some research. I've actually been part of two different research studies on trichotillomania. One was a
Uh-huh.
medicinal study, and then the other one was a study where they are looking at brain function. They're looking at comorbidity. So, like what you asked earlier about the anxiety, and I talked about my trauma.
Hmm.
So they're looking at the links between anxiety, depression, trauma, and other mental health issues and trichotillomania. And they are also looking at a genetic factor. And
Hmm.
so when I went through that research, they had me doing a battery of like mental health exercise, psychiatric exercises and assessments. They did MRIs to see if
Uh-huh.
there's something like physically with the brain that's happening. Um,
Yeah.
in relation to the hair pulling, they did blood work to see if there was a genetic component and factor. But that was all right before COVID, and I haven't heard anything about where the research
Hmm.
stands since COVID.
Yeah.
But they are moving in the right direction and starting to do more research to find out more information to see if there is a genetic component to it. Interestingly enough, though, like when I was a kid, my parents meant well, but my parents didn't know what I was doing. They didn't understand mental health, right? Like it was the 90s.
Right.
Mental health
Yeah.
wasn't as talked about like it is today. And so they didn't know how to handle the situation. And I often was punished for my pulling. I'd
Hmm.
get grounded, get things taken away, like because
Yep.
like my dad was like, if I that was like if I give consequences for the behavior, maybe the behavior will stop, right? And
Right.
so it wasn't until after I wrote my book and I published in 2018. So this was probably maybe like late 2018, early 2019. We were at a family reunion and some of my cousins and people were buying my book from me and I had my book there and we were talking about
Mhm.
it. And my dad said, I wonder if it's genetic. And I was like, why do you think that? And he was like, well, and then he started talking about how the wind blowing like his lashes, he didn't like
Uh-huh.
it. And he would pick if the wind or something blows at his.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow.
like I got
Huh.
in trouble for that as a kid. And now you're telling me that you did it and there could be a genetic component
Yeah.
to this. Like, really? But
Oh, wow.
but that just kind of shows like, that wasn't something that he was really experiencing himself at the time. So he didn't know how
Mhm.
to handle it or how to deal with it. But then
Yeah.
later on, when it developed for him, it was like, oh, could there be a genetic component here? And so
Uh-huh.
that's definitely
Mhm.
something that's still being researched.
Yeah.
Like a light bulb moment right there. Just
Hmm.
something clicked in him to read the book, and that is. fantastic to hear. Uh, just out of curiosity, you wrote this book, but who's been the most influential person in your life?
Oh, that was not a question I was prepared for. Like that's hard because I have had so many amazing people in my life that I've looked up to over the years in different aspects and regards in different areas. Like I have a great uncle that was the person who was probably like the most single-handedly responsible for getting me into church and going to church. That his just wanting to take me to vacation Bible school and to youth group on Wednesday nights and that sort of a thing really kind of started my relationship with God. And so I
Mhm.
think that was a huge influence in my life. Obviously, my parents are both hard workers. And so there are definitely areas of my life where they have been a huge influence and have motivated me to work hard and to get where I am in life. Um, but then there's just even people like my kids. I look at my
Mhm.
children and their perseverance. I have a 19-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old daughter, and they're super influential to me. Like I learned just as much from them as they learn from me some days. And so I really can't narrow that down to one specific person because there's just
Mhm.
been, so many people in my life who have motivated me and encouraged me and inspired me. Um, to do everything that I do. Like I have my hand in a little bit of everything all the time. And so I have there's so many influences in so many areas. It's hard to just pick
Mhm.
one.
Well, what inspired you to become a counselor?
So that's actually a funny story. In college, I had always wanted to be a broadcast journalist. In my first semester of college, I went to Sam Houston State University and they had auditions for the news team. And they had two positions open, and about 200 students showed up to audition. And so that moment was like a light bulb moment for me that was like, this is going to be a hard industry to make a career out of.
Mhm.
And so I decided not to pursue that. And off and on for the years, I tried. I was like, oh, I'm going to go into nursing. And then I took anatomy and physiology and was like, nope, that's not it. I'm going to go into accounting. And so then I started taking some business and accounting classes and was like, nope, that's not it. And then I ended up taking like a crash, like 6 week, really short, fast paced psychology class and aced it.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
this is interesting. And so I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in psychology. And then after I got that, was like, okay, now what can I do with a psychology degree?
Mhm.
And just kind of started looking at careers and decided on a clinical mental health counseling degree, which allowed
Mhm.
me to be a licensed professional counselor. But now that I look back on it, um, when I got diagnosed, I got sent to a psychiatrist. And at the time, the psychiatrist was only worried about managing the symptoms of my
Mhm.
trichotillomania. So it was just like, let's just make her stop pulling, right? So they put me on medication.
Yeah.
And then it's like, let's try to teach these tools or these skills to make her stop pulling. And nobody ever really tried to get down to the underlying issue, which was like, why did you start pulling and what was happening at that time when this started? And
Yeah.
so that is the one thing that for me, going into counseling and making that decision to go into counseling was that I wanted to know a person's story. I want to know their full background so that I'm not just putting
Mhm.
a band-aid on what they're experiencing in this moment, but we're getting to the root
Mhm.
of the problem and we're treating the root of the problem, not just managing symptoms. And that's one
Mhm.
of the things that like I pride myself on in my practice.
Yeah. That's really the right way to approach things. I have a degree in psychology too, so when you said, "What can you do with a psychology degree?" I sort of related to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go into research psychology though, and um, I that just didn't pan out. So I ended up going into business and and it was amazing how having a psychology degree was useful in the business environment
Yes.
because let's say, I worked with teams a lot. That was just basically how my particular function worked. We worked in teams. So working in a team, either as a team leader or as someone just on the team, um, having known psychology, it was just really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah,
A
it really
super,
is.
a super good degree to have for anybody going into anything, really.
Mhm. Yeah. Business and psychology, I don't think like there's if you're not sure what you want to do in life, either of
Mhm.
the like even just an associate's degree in either of those is
Yeah,
is really good because psychology is just like the study of how of people's behavior. And then business
right.
go wrong with either. So like if you understand how people work and function
Uh-huh.
and think, like it's gonna just enhance anything that you end up doing in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does.
You have overcome a lot, and in the world, people call that resilience. So I'm going
Yeah.
to switch subjects a little bit.
Okay.
You are part of the Reigning Resilient Queens,
I
and you
am.
do the pageant life. Let's
Yes.
go a little bit into that because I really want to hear how you overcame a lot of these obstacles to actually go on stage.
Oh, I lost you.
Are you there?
There we go. Now I hear
Did
you.
you lose?
I lost you for a
Oh,
second.
sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
tell us
repeat
more
the
about
question.
being in pageants.
Yeah. So I am so excited. I am part of the Reigning Resilient Queens. And I am so excited about that project. I have been friends with Genesis Gomez, the creator mastermind behind this project, for years now. We met and became friends in the modeling community in Denver. And when she asked me if I was interested in writing a book or writing a chapter for the book, I like jumped on it. Like it wasn't even a question. The interesting thing about that was I had had a meeting with one of my spiritual mentors the day before, and she told me, "You're going to write a book." And you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And so she was telling me about all of the stuff that I was going to do with the book. And I thought, like, I was going to write this was going to be related to my trichotillomania. And she's like, "No, you're done with that. Like, you've wrote that. That book is done. This is going to be about something else." Well, then Genesis the next day reaches out to me and is like, "Hey, I'm doing this book. Do you want to be part of it?" And so my chapter in the book, I sat down, wrote it. And the chapter in the book was going to be about overcoming narcissistic abuse, because I had just gotten out of a relationship with a narcissist. And the project ended up getting put on hold. Some things fell apart with the project. It's had its own share of battles for us to get it published, but it is now we're in the last days before we're actually have all of our chapters due so that we can get ready to publish. Um, but recently my chapter just changed again and we took it back to my trichotillomania. But we talked about how my trichotillomania actually fed into the beliefs about myself that led me into those unhealthy relationships. And
Mhm.
so my chapter dives into a little bit of both of those. But it's a project that I'm so excited about. Genesis asked me if I would be her queen of inner beauty, which was a special honor for me. And so that just means that I'm serving on the leadership team. I'm one of 4 women on the leadership team for this book and this project. And as a counselor, part of my role in that project is going to be to read each woman's chapter and then write a summary about the mental health issues or disorders that person experienced from their chapter and give resources to the readers so that the readers understand this person was going through anxiety, this person experienced trauma, and this was what those signs of trauma were. And here's
Mhm.
resources for how to manage those or how to deal with those. And so I'm super excited about being part of that project. And it's something that if you've talked to Genesis and you know anything about this project, it's more than just a book. It's becoming a whole movement of its own. There's going to be a men's version of the book. We're looking at a teen version of the book. And so it really is it's taken a life of its own and it's going to grow to anything bigger than we could have even imagined. Um, and that, like, the resiliency, like you said, like, it's overcoming a lot. In every chapter, there's 20 women contributing a chapter to this book,
Wow.
and every chapter is just a woman who's overcome obstacles and odds in her life and is still going, still pursuing their dreams, and and wants to encourage, inspire other women to do the same. So there's my story. There's stories of a good friend of mine. She's actually one of my pageant sponsors, and is a co-owner of the gym, the Women's Fortress Gym, that I go to. She survived breast cancer during pregnancy. She found out she had
Wow.
breast cancer while she was pregnant, and so she's contributing a chapter. And we have women who have been in horrible situations that are contributing chapters, and then we have women who are like, who have even thought like, oh, I haven't been through as much as you guys. Like, I don't know that I can contribute. And I'm like, yes, we all have a story and we all have something to contribute, because somebody who's reading the book might not be able to relate to my story because they don't pull their hair, but they can relate to your story because you went through a divorce and they went through a
Mhm.
divorce. And so I think that that was the important thing, is that there's all this spectrum of stories in this one book that every woman who reads it can take something from and leave encouraged and inspired and
Mhm.
motivated to go and overcome anything, their obstacles that they're facing and challenge and being challenged with. Um, and then the queens part, people ask me all the time about the queens. They're like, I'm not a beauty queen. You don't have to be a beauty queen. There's a few of us who are beauty queens that are contributing to the book, but you don't have to be a beauty queen to contribute to the book. In Genesis's mind and in our mind, we're all queens. And so it's really just owning your experiences to be the best and learning how to be the best version of yourself from that. Um, so yeah, that's just a little spiel about the Reigning Resilient Queens, because I'm super excited about the project. Um,
Yeah.
but in terms of the pageantry world, in 2017, and this was really what motivated me to talk about my trichotillomania publicly, I was crowned Ms. Woman Colorado, United States. And Hair Club is one of my sponsors, and I'm still working with Hair Club today. I've been with them for over 5 years now. They are amazing. I'm one of their brand ambassadors. I'm in their commercials, in their advertising, and I get to do a lot of work with them. But they really helped with my book. They bought 400 copies right off the bat of Where's My Hair and made it part of their Hair Club for Kids program, which was
Wow.
absolutely amazing. So they provide free hair services to kids under the age of 18, regardless of why they are experiencing hair loss. And they made that my book part of that program. So every kid who came into the program got a copy of my book, and they have them in
Mhm.
all the lobbies at their locations. So that was super awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but that really kind of like set this in motion, like the ability for me to start talking about it openly and publicly.
Mhm.
um and so I just moved to Tennessee in July, the end of July of 2022. And I was very active in the modeling and acting community in Denver prior to moving out here. And I somehow or another ended up friends with the state director of the Mrs. Tennessee America pageant. And she was like, you should compete. And so we had this conversation. And so decided that I was going to compete. And so I am the reigning Miss West Tennessee for America Strong. And I'll be competing at the Miss Tennessee for America Strong pageant in April, in Sevierville, Tennessee. So I'm super, super excited about
Yeah.
and so looking forward to
That
it.
is so awesome.
Oh, that's
That is
great.
so awesome. Yeah, when I
Congratulations.
Thank you.
definitely,
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely, when I saw that on your Facebook page, I just had to I wanted to incorporate that into it because that's such an amazing thing that
Yeah.
you've done and overcome
That,
on things. And
mhm.
Genesis, yes, she's one of the most powerful, uplifting people I've ever had the chance of meeting, and she's bringing together amazing people to just, as we call it here, shine her light into the world. It's been
Yes.
Mhm.
amazing knowing her, and I'm so glad that she brought us both together for that.
Yeah.
I have another
Yeah.
question for you, and this may be a little bit difficult, and we've heard a little bit about your hardships, but have you faced any other hardships?
Yeah, I think, like I said, like my parents didn't know, like they tried, right? They you don't
Mhm,
know what you don't know. And so I think growing up, like they tried their best. It was difficult, but my childhood with the trichotillomania wasn't always the easiest because my parents didn't know how to handle that. And so and then that resulted in me acting out. But it
mhm,
also a combination of all of that, it also um I had a lot of negative messages about myself, that I wasn't lovable, that I wasn't wanted, that I like all of these things, just negative self-esteem, negative self-worth.
mhm,
And so like then when you're a teenager and you've been sexually abused as a child, you feel like no one wants you, like you're not lovable, that you're never gonna be good enough, like
mhm,
all of these things. And then you start dating and
mhm,
you have this hair pulling disorder, which makes you already feel like weird and like you're not going to be accepted or wanted or loved because you're doing this thing too. um and then you start dating and then you have boys breaking up with you because you won't have sex, or because you're whatever. It just reiterates some of those messages that, yeah, unless you do this or unless you do that, you're not wanted, you're not loved, you're not worthy. And so that resulted in just like me really developing some really unhealthy relationships and going into some
mhm,
really unhealthy relationships. The majority of my relationships had been in with people who are emotionally unavailable, who have struggled with addiction or some kind of their own, drugs or alcohol. And so it was really there have been some hardships. I've been married twice. I was married at 19. That relationship, he had his own set of issues with addiction, and that relationship became physically abusive. Um, and we ended up getting a divorce within 2 years. And then I was in a relationship with my oldest daughter's father, I was never married to, but we were in a relationship for a number of years, and he had struggled with addiction of his own. And then I married my second ex-husband, who I was with for 10 years, and I had my youngest daughter with, and he struggled with alcoholism. And those, when you're in active addiction, you're just not aware of other people's emotions, other people's needs. Like all you're constantly thinking about is your own. And
mhm,
so I really that makes someone who's already struggling with self-worth and self-love that much more lack that much more confidence. Like it just kind of like just keeps pushing down
mhm,
that
mhm,
confidence that you have. And so, the last relationship that I was in, my husband, ex-husband, and I got a divorce, um, prior to the relationship that I'm in now. That last relationship was a short relationship. It was 18 months, 2 years, but it was with a narcissist. And
mhm,
while there were some very positive things that came out of that, because he was actually the person who encouraged me to compete in the Ms. Woman Colorado pageant, and there were some positive things that came with that. There was also a lot that really broke me at times, and like caused a lot of shame. It caused a lot of blame. My children suffered for a short period of time as a result of that relationship. So I would be really hard on myself, feel guilt about like jumping into this relationship with this man who, seemed to be everything that I wanted and needed in the very beginning, and then switched overnight and was
mhm,
controlling and manipulative and would manipulate my kids and was just horrible, isolated us from everyone that was around us, isolated us from friends, family, and so coming through all of that, it was during that relationship, and I really think this is like where God like really started to really change my perspective on everything that I had gone through in my life, even the trichotillomania. um, was that as I was going through all of this, um, and I started seeking God more, I realized that I was codependent, and that codependency had led to me choosing partners that I thought I could fix.
mm,
And when I couldn't fix them, like I that just like broke me down even more. And so I just really started learning a lot about like codependency at that time. I was a therapist, but I really didn't know a lot about emotional codependency. I looked at my life and thought, I'm very independent. I'm not codependent because I was financially on my own, independent, financially independent. I was taking care of my kids. Like I could go build anything that you needed me to be. Like I didn't need a man in my mind, but emotionally I was codependent. And so that really taught me a lot. And then I started doing a lot more research, and I just started working on doing a lot of self work. All therapists should have their own therapist. Like I believe that regardless of what your issues are and what you're going through. And so I had a couple of different therapists that I was working with on a couple of different things. I started reading a lot of self-help books. Spiritually, I was spending more time at church with God, watching church sermons. And I just saw so much growth in myself through that. And then I've learned even more recently, I've continued to do that healing work. And I've learned more about like heart bondage and things on a spiritual level that I was experiencing and how to overcome those things. And so there has been a lot, but that's the thing too. Like I want women, and that's part of my platform is finding how God gave my pain purpose and encouraging others to find their purpose through their pain. The stuff that I've gone through, and I've heard it, like this was kind of like a theme through last year when I won the Inspire You Network's award for Children's Author of 2023 for my book. That couple of weeks prior to that, and then in my speech that wasn't prepared because I wasn't expecting to win, and then a couple beyond that, purpose kept coming up, the word purpose, and that phrase, God gave my pain purpose, and God gave your pain purpose, kept coming up from like things with like my book, just random conversations with clients. Because now I spend all of this time working with clients who've experienced narcissistic abuse, who are codependent, who have trichotillomania, and who have gone through and experienced a lot of the same things that I have. And they've all told me, like, because I'm open and honest about my own experiences and my own struggles, because you've experienced this, like you're so able to help me. I understand so much more because I can relate to your stories. I can relate,
Yeah.
I can relate to that. And that other therapists don't get. Like they know what they know from a book, not because they've experienced it firsthand. And so in my perspective, it's like God gave all of that crap that I went through purpose because now I can use what my experiences and how I've come through my experiences to help other people get through theirs.
You have lived a lot, and I'm so happy to get to know you here. Thank you for sharing this moment with us and showing how much you shine.
Thank
I personally want to say I'm very proud of you for overcoming all of these obstacles and tragedies and traumas in your life. Looking back on it, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, what advice would I give to my younger self? So the first thing I would say is trust God. He has a plan and his timing is always perfect. Um, and I'm not a patient person, so that would be huge advice for me. That would be huge advice for me. Trust God and his timing because his timing is perfect. It might not happen when you want it to, but it'll happen. And then I think the other thing would be to not give up on yourself and to trust yourself, and to know that you are more than able to accomplish and achieve everything that you want to, and you will do it as long as you don't give up and you stay resilient.
Yeah, I really admire your self-confidence. It's something that people who have gone through the kinds of background trauma that you have, uh, that's something I think they struggle with is having self-confidence. And you've got it, and it shows, and it's inspiring.
Thank you. I wouldn't be being honest if I said that it's there every day. There are definitely days where, like, every once in a while, there are days where you're like, and you have to remind yourself, like, look where you've come from. Look how far you've come,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's okay to feel it for a moment, recognize it, acknowledge it, and then move back on from it and not get stuck
yeah,
there. And I think that's where a lot
right.
of people, in what happens with a lot of people is that we have a slip and then we get stuck instead of just acknowledging it for what it is and then moving forward again.
Yeah, right.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Do you have any plans for any additional books from here?
Yeah, so outside of the Reigning Resilient Queens, I actually am wanting to work on and have started. I'm early stages, but I am working on a book specifically for, and it's going to be a more spiritually therapeutic book, but specifically for Christian women overcoming narcissistic. A book on how Christian women can overcome narcissistic abuse.
Mhm. That sounds great.
That is a
Excellent
much
topic.
needed book to be out there. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We need to talk more on that one after this,
Yes.
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Um, just to let everybody know, we are talking to the award-winning author Heather Brooke, who has shared her story with us. Heather, is there anything else you want to talk about this evening? Is there anything you want to bring up? Anything you want to discuss, or any news you want to share before we end this podcast?
Yeah.
And also, can you tell us where your book can be found?
Yeah, you can order it from Amazon. I believe it's on Barnes and Noble online, and
Mhm.
then westbowpress.com.
Okay,
Yeah. And I have personal copies too that if readers or listeners are interested, they can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram and shoot me a
mhm.
message and I can send them a signed copy if they want to order directly from me.
Great.
I love that. I love that. Signed copies are the best, and I
Yes.
definitely will be interested in that. And for everybody out there watching, you can reach out to us as well, and we'll get you in contact with Heather so you can get a copy of the book. And my final thing that I want to bring up is that you were at a gymnastics competition recently for your daughter. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. My 11-year-old is a competitive gymnast. This is her first year competing. And so we just finished our last regular season competition, and we have 2 weeks until state, and then we're done for the season. But yeah, I'm so proud of her
Wow.
because this is her. She's only been doing gymnastics for a little over a year and a half, and she tried out for the competitive team at her gymnast where she was doing rec gymnastics 6 months into doing rec, and she made the Excel Gold level team. And so she's
Wow.
been competing with girls who have been doing this for 4, 5, 6 years. And this is her first year, and she's done really well. I'm so proud of her. And she qualified for state, so she
Great.
gets to compete in state at state in 2 weeks. And so just that's so much fun. And I know you have a kiddo who just started gymnastics too, didn't she?
Just started, yeah. She's gone 6 weeks in and she absolutely loves it. So I'm looking for advice. What can I expect? Where do I go from here? Am I the overprotective dad and no, you can't do flips, or am I the step away and just let her go? What advice do you have on that?
Yeah, yeah. So that is, if she's got a good coach, trust the coach. The coach isn't going to let her do anything that is going to get her hurt. Um, Expect if she just goes into competitive long hours of practice. My daughter she's like I said, she's 11. She makes straight A's, which is amazing. She's so smart, but she spends 12 to 15 hours a week at the gym doing practice. We're at the gym,
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
3 to 4 days a week, and so that lots of practice, lots of money. it's expensive.
Oh no. Oh,
All the
no.
competitions are expensive, and then it's like $20 to get into each competition, and then parking fees for the competitions. So, lots of money. But it's also a lot of fun. And she will you want to talk about a self-esteem boost. If she has a good coach, being in gymnastics will be such a self-esteem boost for her and will increase her self-confidence because those girls are doing things that, when I go to the gym, my daughter's like doing chin-ups and pull-ups, and I'm like, I can't give me the bungee cords because I can't do that without the bungees. Right? So it just does. It will give her so much confidence in herself and in her abilities. So just trust her, trust the coaches, and I think like she'll have so much fun. She'll love it.
She is. She's absolutely loving it now. So I fear the expense aspect of things, but we'll figure out a way to make it manage. And I look forward to the Olympics this year. Um, I know it's the Summer Olympics, so we have the gymnastics competition this year, and Chloe's going to have her first chance to sit there and watch it and actually be engaged because
Mhm.
it's something that she wants to do.
Yes.
Whereas before, when I'd watched the Olympics, she didn't know any of the stuff that was going on, and now she can tell me what this gymnast did, or what that gymnast did, or what a floor routine is, or
Yes.
what how things are scored. So I'm looking forward to that with her.
That would be the other thing I would say, learn the lingo because it frustrates my daughter when she's like, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, she's like, you know what that is. Mm-mm. No, I didn't grow up in the gymnastics world. I did basketball, volleyball, tennis. My oldest did basketball. Like I don't know I don't know all the gymnast lingo. So I would just say that too. Get caught up on the lingo of what all of the flips and the different things are called because you're not going to have a clue what she's talking about.
I could probably study it for years and still not know what it is. but but I will definitely take that into consideration and need to learn what everything is for sure, especially if I want to help her become a little gymnast herself.
Yes.
Well, we are just about done for the evening. Susan, is there anything you want to ask Heather before we end this podcast today?
No, I've been just asking her questions all along, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming and being on the podcast. Uh, you've just been a great guest. You've been so open and so honest, and I see your love of God. I really appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And that's my purpose. Like I want to just share with others like that it doesn't matter what you've gone through. God will give it purpose and can give it purpose if you'll let him. Right? So often we hold on to the experiences that we've gone through and we let those define who we are. And we can let those things define who we are in a positive way or a negative way. And if we just give it to God, he will give it the positive way. He will define it and use it to define us in a positive way, like he's done, like he's done with me. And I just want all of the listeners to know, like, it doesn't matter what you have gone through in life, what you've experienced in life. God can give that purpose if you will give it to him and if you'll let him. And you have no idea the impact that you can make on other people until you do.
Agreed, 100%. We call that shine, and that's the reason why we call this podcast Shine. And you definitely inhibit every aspect of that. So thank you for letting your light shine. Thank you for coming on the Shine with Curiosity and Encouragement podcast. Thank you for sharing your story, for being so open. And when we post it, we'll put your information on there so people can reach out and get a copy of your book.
Sounds great. Thank
Hey,
you.
you're most certainly very welcome. Thank you for coming on. Uh, Let me go ahead and stick around afterwards. We're going to wrap this up, say a few last pieces, and we'll talk to you about a few other things. Thank you again, Heather, for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right. What an amazing guest. That was for being back now. It was absolutely fantastic. Oh, Susan, your camera went away. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I have to blow my nose.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. After a long hiatus, it's so good to be back. It's so glad to be back on the air again. Like I said, what an amazing guest to come back to. Heather just exuberates what shine is, that positivity, that going forth and
Mhm,
using your skills, using your purpose to help change the world just one little bit at a time. I'm so happy that we got to meet her. I'm so happy that you guys got to hear her story. I'm so happy that we got to hear her story. Just
mhm.
what an amazing way to
Yeah,
come back on this podcast.
totally inspiring. Yes.
Com- Completely inspiring. I agree 100%. I really want to get a copy of her book. So
Mhm,
we're definitely going to find out how we can do that. And I look forward to what she does in the future. It just sounds absolutely exciting to do that and hear what she's got coming on.
mhm.
We do have more guests scheduled, so we are back weekly Sunday nights at 4 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Central. I guess that would be 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. West Coast. So
Yeah.
thank you everybody for tuning in. Susan, is there anything you want to say before we end?
Nope. Just thank you so much um, for helping to make this such a great um, episode.
It was absolutely fantastic to come back on and
Yeah.
be sure to check us out at soulsunshine.com. We've got a lot of recently published books. We have a lot of books that are coming up. We've had some new authors that have signed on with us. We've got a lot of exciting things. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. And when you go out there, go forth and shine. In the words of curiosity and encouragement, love will change the world. So
Yes,
thank you,
it
everybody, for
will.
spending your Sunday with us. And we'll see you guys next week.